Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Well, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one actually based on one of your past suggestions. This one almost 2 years old. So I did have to go a little bit further back, but I was able to find one that I don't know how I missed it, considering how fascinating this information is. So it goes to show you yet again, if you don't see your suggestion here, who knows, a couple of years down the line, I'll definitely be able to check it out then. This one just also proves that whenever you think you've reached the limits of aliens and UFOs and the unique otherworldly aspects associated to them, well, you'll definitely find other things that are stranger and more bizarre, such as the case here with this encounter that apparently just occurred once somewhere there in old Saybrook, Connecticut, but to this day still remains as mysterious as ever. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info of this encounter here, and it's known as the old Saybrook Blockheads Encounter, which you're looking at a picture of now. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's share all this info associated with this unique one-time experience. So what was this old Saybrook Blockheads Encounter? Well, it happened there on December 16th, 1957, and it was there at a location called Old Saybrook, Connecticut, hence the name, at least with part of the encounter. And on that fateful night, somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, there was a retired teacher by the name of Miss Mary M. Starr who had this encounter. Now, I tried to see if I could find a picture of her, and I think I did, but I'm not going to share it here just in case, because the time period and the location of this person, it was a picture I found of an obituary that just occurred actually last year in 2019. It's like almost a 50-50 chance that this is her, but until I find other proof showcasing that this was truly the same person that had this encounter there in Connecticut, then I'll save it for later on. But otherwise, on that fateful morning, Miss Mary M. Starr, she was there in her bedroom, just nonchalantly sleeping just like any other night, when all of a sudden there was a very bright light that awoke her during that time period. It must have been very, very strong, because otherwise, if it was just a regular light, let's say if it was like a street lamp light or some kind of car headlights passing by, that's the usual stuff that doesn't really wake people. But here, it must have been a very strong light coming through the bedroom window in order for her to look out. And so when she did so, she woke up and then she looked out in that area, and at first she thought she was looking at a downed airplane. It was one of those horrific circumstances where you think maybe you're looking at a fire or an explosion associated with that, but no, as her eyesight was getting clearer and she was waking up more, that's when she saw this. Apparently she was looking at a flying object, and this object was very, very close to her home there. In fact, it was so close, it was just barely hovering above her clothesline, the clothesline that she was using to essentially dry some of her clothes there. And in fact, here's how she described this particular object. In fact, you're looking at a drawing of it right here, in fact. It's classic alien or a UFO, right down to the token designs associated with it. There you have the cylindrical, almost pointed ends on the side. There you have the 4 or multiple windows, normally tied with aliens and UFOs. The diameter of it seems to be the classic size too as well. She didn't really go into specifics in terms of its, like, let's say length or its width, but considering that the windows contain some aliens that were around 4 feet tall, more on that here in a minute, then it gives you an idea how large this thing was. So having this essentially hovering right outside your home, right by the window, to the point where it's by the clotheslines that are close to the window itself, that must have been quite a sight there too. But yes, what was more shocking, what was more fascinating, what was actually within those windows. And in fact, as she was looking at those windows, that's when she was aghast to realize that she was looking at these 2 strange alien-like entities. And here's how she described them here. They were these creatures, if you could call them that to her guess were about 4 feet tall. It was difficult to tell because she was basically observing them from the outside in. So they never really went outside the aircraft. Rather, she saw them pass by the windows And you can imagine how limited that kind of eyesight or that kind of viewpoint would be. But there she was, able to at least describe what she said here. And in fact, she also made her own drawing, which you're looking at as well here. So she said that they were these strange entities that were about 4 feet tall, were her best guess. They had these featureless appendages. In other words, they didn't have any like kind of hands, but still you could kind of discern that they were appendages, where normally hands would be with fingers. Imagine without that, instead just one big nub, and that's essentially what you have here. And then the way that the outside of its body, it seemed to have this rubbery coating associated with it, almost like a flowing skirt. It was very unique when I was reading this information. I could imagine it almost being like if you think of a ghost or a spirit, like a Hollywood movie from the 50s, how they always portrayed ghosts with these flowing skirts, hanging sheets, that kind of stuff. That's what I thought this portrayed as, at least based on her description here. But no, in this case, whatever this was, it was wrapping around the entire area. It was almost like a jacket, yellowish in fact, or pale yellowish, almost to the point of being white. And then also there were no legs tied to it as well. Who knows, there could have been, but whatever this quote unquote jacket was, whatever the skirt was, it was absolutely covering the entire base, and so you were not able to see what was underneath it. But by far, the most shocking feature was the actual head itself. In fact, this head, if you could call it that, was essentially a huge transparent cube looking straight into it, and inside it was something along the lines of this bright red core. It was emanating its almost like its own glow, and this red core could closely be associated with its head. But there were no discernible features, like there were no eyes, no mouths, no ears, nothing else. Instead, it was this bright red core that almost had a rubbery look to it. I don't know how it worked or how it moved about. Presumably, it was always within the middle of that cube, or who knows, maybe it was bouncing around within the cube itself as it was looking around, if you could call it looking. But still, whatever this red core was, that was the closest thing that you could discern when it comes to having some kind of head. But all this she was able to ascertain right then and there. And then these hands, these arms, especially the right arms, were moving about. Apparently they would raise up and then they would go down as well. And then these jacket, again, that I was mentioning earlier, would flare about too. Like I stated, it was almost like it was windy, like it was a ghost sheet, something else that would just make it flow as opposed to just standing still. So she was taking all of this in during those few moments, and whether these creatures, these entities, saw her, it didn't really matter to them, because they were just going about busy within the actual UFO doing whatever they were doing. In fact, the way I was reading it seemed like they didn't even pay attention to her at all. In fact, they were just going about their business, whatever they were doing there above her clothesline. And then when things took another mysterious turn, it was this. Apparently these windows, the way she was looking at them, all of a sudden, they just vanished. They just completely merged within the UFO. At least that's how I read it. 1 minute they're there and you're looking inward, and then the next minute it's just one solid wall made up of the same material of the rest of the UFO itself. Crazy, right? I mean, the type of technology that this would take, where all of a sudden you see these windows and then they're gone, just like that. That's definitely from another world. And then she saw this sparkling antenna, is how she described it, come up from one end of the hair of the actual UFO, and then towards the entire area, the hole itself, it began to glow right after that point. So this antenna went up, it started to sparkle, and then it caused the entire UFO to glow. And then finally, when the glow faded, whatever that did, it allowed the UFO to essentially shoot straight up. And when it did so, it made some kind of zigzagging, complicated path, is how it was described, and then it was gone. It did all of this without a sound. So from the point of the UFO being there, to the windows disappearing, to then the antenna popping up, and then finally the glowing, and then the object shooting straight upwards, there was no sound, nothing at all, Otherwise, again, it would have alerted not just her, but some of the other neighbors. And the only reason she even became alert of what this thing was doing there was because of the bright glow that it emanated. But that was it. That was the entire experience associated with this old Saybrook Blockheads encounter. I don't know how essentially Miss Miriam Starr was able to share this with anyone else. I don't know if she talked to neighbors or if she talked to journalists or if others maybe happened to see it from far away and they were able to discern that that was her in her area. That was my cat, by the way. She's saying hello. But yes, as far as this news, this encounter, it was able to leak, and then that's what essentially what we're talking about to this day. Crazy experience, no? Imagine that, waking up and then seeing these aliens just going about their business, just like we would. Like, imagine if you were looking, if you were downtown just looking into any office building, you would see people living about their lives, their workspace, doing whatever they're doing there. These aliens were doing this exact thing within their UFO, but here you have Miss Miriam Starr just happened to be looking in whenever she saw them doing this. Who knows what the UFO was doing? Who knows what it was inspecting? Why it decided to be in that area, glow, and then disappear? All of that just remains mysterious, but still, it's definitely a very fascinating encounter. Like I mentioned at the beginning, just when you think that you've read it all and it comes to, and you're prepared for any other circumstance when it comes to the bizarreness associated with these encounters, there's another new one that just takes things to another level. But if anyone has any more info, anything else might have missed, anyone there from the old Saybrook area, maybe you might have known Mrs. Miriam Starr, the way I read it, since she was a teacher. No doubt that she had a lot of people that knew her there. So if anyone has any family members or someone else that knows more about this, then please post those comments below. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care.